A lot. My given name was Johannes Christmas Wolfgang Theophilus Amadeus Mozart. As you can tell, they couldn't make up their name or their mind.
Maybe I'll just stick with calling you Mozart.
That is fine.
Okay, can you please tell us about yourself?
Well, I was born in Austria in about 1756. My father's name was Leopold. He was also a musician and dedicated most of his life to teaching my sister and me. He could tell that I was gifted for music, so he laid down his career to nurture my own.
What do you mean by having a gift for music?
I took music naturally. I first played an instrument at 3. I composed by 5, and I had mastered several instruments by the age of 7. Why, I even wrote music before I could even write words.
What an interesting fact. I think we'll start there. Okay, kids, we're going to say wrote music before he wrote words. Can you say that?
Wrote music before he wrote words.
And then we'll use our index finger to draw a note in the air. Can you draw a quarter note in the air? Okay, all right, good job. If you showed so much talent so early on, it must have been a life of ease. People probably flocked to Salzburg to see you.
No, that's not how things were in the 18th century in Europe. People did not come to see you. You had to go to them. I spent most of my childhood traveling to courts and castles and theaters, trying to make a name for myself.
Did you enjoy traveling?
Sometimes. My sister, Mary Ann, traveled with us as well, and so we traveled together.
That will be our next fact. Performed throughout Europe as a child. Oh, but what instrument did you play?
I played the violin, but mostly composed and performed on the piano.
Okay, so as we say, traveled Europe as a child, we are going to act like we're playing the piano. Can you do that? So let's say traveled to Europe through Europe as a child. So our first fact was what? Wrote music before he wrote words and traveled Europe as a child. Tell us something else about yourself. Maybe some more about this musical gift you referred to.
Ah, yes, my gift. It's difficult to explain, but music spoke to me in a way it rarely speaks to others. It was as though my mind could hear it and track it and contain it somehow.
I don't get that.
Let me give you an example. At the age of 13, I was in Italy on tour. I went to a concert at the Sistine Chapel. I was so moved by the music that I went home and wrote it all out.
Wrote it out? You mean you wrote your thoughts about it?
No, I wrote the entire concert with very few errors in it. It was as if my brain soaked it in and held it, and then I could write it out.
That's incredible. Truly a gift indeed. Let's use that as our next fact. Incredible mind for music. Let's say incredible mind for music as we point to our brain. So incredible mind for music. So number 1, wrote music before he wrote words. Traveled Europe as a child. An incredible mind for music. Then what?
I traveled and I traveled and I traveled. It was hard to support myself through music, especially when Austria went to war. I got married and continued to travel and compose and performed in order to support my family. All in all, I wrote 625 pieces of music.
625?
Roughly. Some were not finished, and many did not survive throughout the years.
Well, there's our next fact. Mozart wrote over 600 pieces of music. Let's put our hand down towards the ground and then move it up like you're showing a growing stack of compositions. So let's say over 600 compositions. Okay, ready? Over 600 compositions. So 1, he wrote music before he wrote words. He traveled Europe as a child. He had an incredible mind for music, and he wrote over 600 compositions. You must have lived a long life with such a vast amount of compositions.
Sadly, that's not the case. I died at the age of 35.
I'm sorry to hear that. How did you die?
It is unknown how I died. Though there are many theories, some say I was poisoned, others say that I worked myself to death. Still others say that I had a fever or an infection or the flu, but I still died handsome.
Well, we will always remember you as one of the greatest Baroque composers.
You mean classical?
I mean, what?
You will remember me as one of the greatest classical composers, not Baroque.
Oh, what's the difference?
Baroque music was emotional and expressively played by my heroes, Bach, Handel, but classical music, it was more restrained, more refined.
I see.
It's like this. Imagine when I say Baroque, that you are jumping for joy. Go ahead, let's try it, kids. Baroque. You're not jumping for joy. Let's try that again. Baroque. A little better. Let's do that again. Baroque. There we go. My little Baroqueans. Now, when I say classical, you stand straight up and bow slowly.
Like this.
Classical. Much better. Yes, classical.
You said classical.
So that,
Yeah. So
Yeah.
classical. What do we do?
yes, we bow. And then Baroque.
Oh, now I get it. Thanks for that. That can be our last fact. We will stand up very straight and bow with elegance as we say classical composer. Ready? Classical composer. So number one, he wrote music before he wrote words. He traveled Europe as a child. He had an incredible mind for music. He wrote over 600 compositions, and he was a classical composer. Anything else we should know about classical music?
Why, yes, there are 3 S's.
Slow, symphony, and songs.
No,
Salzburg, Sistine Chapel, and singers.
no, but getting closer.
Saltines, sunsets, and silly putty.
What? No, not enough. I will tell you. The 3 most popular forms of classical music were the sonata, the symphony, and the string quartet.
Sonata, symphony, string quartet. Can you guys say those with me? Sonata, symphony, and string quartet. Got it. Anything else we should know?
There's one last thing I'd like to share with you. A joke, actually.
Please, go right ahead.
It's often noted that when I died at 35, I was not rich and famous. I was poor.
That's a really bad joke.
It's not a joke, but I'm getting there.
Oh.
So I died poor, unable to support my family's lavish lifestyle. Here's the joke. What's the difference between a classical composer and a large pizza?
Large pizza's better.
I don't know. What is the difference between a classical composer and a large pizza?
A large pizza can feed a family of 4.
That's still a really bad joke. So let's review our facts one more